Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Today's guest on the Core Women Podcast is Dawn Smith, who is the founder of Whole Life Solutions and an expert in executive, career transition, and relationship coaching. With over a decade of experience in mental health, neuroscience, and habits, she helps professionals in high-stress industries navigate major transitions. Dawn is also a premarital counselor of 16 years and the creator of Relationship Coach. Dawn is serving couples in crisis. She's spoken at renowned events and is a 2024 TEDx speaker who talks about disrupting outdated relationship myths. I'm excited to dive into her unique approach to coaching and transformation. So let's jump right into this and welcome Dawn.
I love that intro. Thank you so much, Summer. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. But before we really get into your professional background, if you could describe your journey in one word to this point, what would that word be and why?
Misfit.
Oh, okay. I remember reading something about that in your intro, in your bio. Tell us more.
I think we tend to have a sense really early on of kind of asking why and figuring out different ways to do things and not understanding traditional rules of conformity or questioning them and seeing if there's a different way to go about things. And there's a lot of pros and cons to that, right? But I think that has really kind of been the hallmark. Is often I just didn't fit the mold and I didn't know why. And then after a while, I embraced that. And it was always about trying to see if there was another approach and a way to do things better, more creatively, reach more people, all of that.
Well, I love that because you knew something was going on, something was a little different. And so you adjusted to that accordingly to find your outlet, to maneuver through systems that were very traditional in regards to school systems, work systems, those different types of things. And I completely understand that because I have an audio processing deficit. And so I didn't recognize it until later on when I got to college and I was having a hard time in a particular class. I was like, something's wrong. Why is this happening? And I need to go check this out. And so they said, well, you've compensated for it so well all these years. You must have worked out a system for yourself. And so I love to hear this because in so many instances, many people don't recognize this and think, why am I this misfit? Or where do I fit in? Or what's going on with me? And nothing's wrong with you per se. It's your mind functions differently. The way you
Exactly.
process things functions differently. I love that. Thank you so much for that word and getting into that. That's really helpful as we begin this interview and this deep dive into your background, both your professional and personal journey. You have so many unique interests. How did your interest in executive career transition and relationship coaching really develop? Where did that come from?
Sure. So my background is in the arts, theater, and social justice. That was originally my background in community organizing. And I got burnt out. And that started me on a long journey of exploration that ultimately led me very unexpectedly to the wedding world. Not somewhere I thought I'd be, but I kind of stumbled into learning about different world traditions and then marrying people and doing premarital and couples counseling. And really, it tapped in this really unexpected way into everything I love. There was elements of theater, there's elements of, the sort of service and psychology background, and just this intimate connection to transition points in people's lives. And I loved it so much that really early on, I realized I'm waking up every day loving what I'm doing. It still feels meaningful. I'm good at it. I'm making a living and I want to do it forever. And I realized how rare that was. And that's what brought me to doing the career coaching. I thought there's so many people out there who haven't found that alignment, who are brought up with this idea that go to a good school, get a good job. If you like it, more power to you. And I just thought there's got to be a way to help people in a creative way where we're not just tweaking your resume or sending you back to school, but actually figuring out that alignment. And so I became this career transition coach. And then the sort of impact and leadership coaching came out of that. The relationship coaching came because when the pandemic happened, I'd been doing the premarital coaching and the transition coaching for so many years that more and more couples were reaching out to me who were actually in crisis, who were in a different place, and were finding that traditional couples counseling wasn't reaching them or wasn't a fit. So I wanted to create something that would bring together what I saw as the best of counseling with the solutions oriented tools from coaching to really do a short-term support for couples in crisis.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's a lot you've mentioned here that I want to kind of bring forward and touch on. As you were going through this, not so much this aha moment, but this transition
Yeah.
where you said you woke up one day and you thought about what you were doing, and what you were doing was still feeling meaningful. That stood out to me because I
Mm,
think a lot of people tend to think, well, I went to school for this.
yeah.
I studied this. I've been conditioned to learn this way or stay in a job or do this way.
Yep.
And that should feel meaningful, but it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't feel meaningful anymore.
Right.
Yet you woke up saying, I've tried something different. It still feels meaningful. Yes, I've had this education. Yes, I've done these other things. But here I am waking up going, I've tried something different and it still feels meaningful. Dawn, that speaks
Mhm.
volumes because a lot of times people will stay in that slump of, no, but I'm supposed to do it this way.
Right. Absolutely.
Tell me, tell us how you woke up feeling this way, because I think a lot of people need to hear that and say, it's okay to change my trajectory. It's okay to change my path.
Not only is it okay, but I really want to push people on it because so often we live from this place of fear because it's new, it's the unknown, and we're dealing with all the things around. I'm not trying to minimize security and lifestyle and being a good provider and all those things. We're not minimizing that. But I think in our society, a lot we get in this sort of dualistic mind frame of like either I'm supposed to stick to my guns and make decent money and provide for my family and do these things because it's the secure path, or I'm supposed to have this pipe dream of following this thing that's more fulfilling and meaningful. Those are not the options. Those are not the options. And when I work with people in transition, it's never, I'm going to help you make a decision in the next week and you're going to leave 100% of this behind and dive 100% into this. That's not how we work. But there is a way to explore options where we can create a range of possibilities and you can put feelers out for different ones. And if you do that in this very concrete, manageable way, you will know very quickly what resonates. And then we build in the stability, the lifestyle, the security. But if you're not starting from a point of your values, your priorities, the things that you give a damn about, the things that you light you up, if that is not your starting point, it's not going to be sustainable, right?
Yeah,
At
absolutely.
best, you stick with it for a long time, you make good money. But what about your mental health? What about your physical health? What about all these other pieces that end up getting expensive too?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because it is so valuable when you can see the shift in yourself and know that you have it in you to make that transition, to do
Mhm.
something different. And yes, it might be a little scary. And yes, it might feel like there's a lot of unknowns, but you'll get through it because you're not leaving everything that you've worked towards behind. You're bringing it forward, and it's wisdom that you can apply to your next steps.
Love that.
You also mentioned something about values and priorities. And I think we talk a
Mhm.
lot about goals many times, but if those goals aren't rooted in your priorities or your values, guess what? You probably won't meet them. You probably won't meet those goals because they're short-lived. I always talk to my partner about this, and we do this every year around New Year's about those New Year's goals.
Yes.
And I laugh because, they say about the 2 week, third week mark,
Yes.
it's like, boom, it's gone.
Yes.
Those goals are gone. And it's
Yes.
because they really aren't rooted in your values and priorities.
Yes.
Or you don't have the first and second and third step to kind of like maneuver your way through to meeting those goals. But more so, I think it has to do with your priorities and values.
So if I could speak to a couple of things there,
Yes.
I love that. So two things there. One is that The 21-day thing is a myth. The actual amount of time
Yes.
it takes on average to build a new habit is 66 days. That's the average. And I love that because I think on the surface we can be like, crap, like that's a long time. But like for those of us who have been through trying stuff, right? Whether it's exercise or diet or whatever, we're like, man, but I did it for 21 days or I did it for 28 days or 30 days. Why didn't it stick? Now it's like, oh, okay. You just have to keep going. And that's why with my clients, we do 90-day plans. Because if I can hold your hand for 90 days, we're through that curve, right?
Yeah.
But to that other part, that's so big. And I know in the book Atomic Habits, that's one of my favorite parts is that he talks about it's not about the goal, it's about who is that person that you are intending to be. Who is that version of yourself? What do they look like, sound like, feel like? How do they live their life? And then you work backwards and create what you're going to do to embody that person. Because if it's a goal in isolation, you ain't going to make it. It's not held to anything about the nature of who you're trying to be.
Yeah. There's so much here. We can go down many roads. Tell us more about your business, Whole Life Solutions, because I think what we're speaking to now is feeding into what you do at Whole Life Solutions.
I love that. Thank you for that. I'm so blessed that I get to wake up every day and do work that I love so much. It's also a little bit bittersweet because I feel like this work is only here because we weren't taught the right things in school. We weren't taught these fundamental things about effective decision making, about how to navigate major chaotic change together, how to connect relationally with other people and see through each other's lens. So, Whole Life Solutions, we really kind of have three different things we do. There's the career transition coaching, which is established professionals, usually 40s, 50s, 60s, who have been at something for a long time and are ready for a major shift. The second one is executive and impact coaching. So, that's primarily because of my nonprofit background. Those are primarily philanthropy, social good, nonprofit, where you got into it because you want to make a difference. And now you're like, what is this day to day? How do I get back to this bigger picture vision of actually service and legacy and impact? So that's that one. And then the third one is the relationship coaching. And that's primarily shorter term support than traditional counseling, where I'm working with couples. Most couples are coming to me around communication, intimacy, and trust. And often there's some real or perceived betrayal in there. And so we're dealing with things that are really intense and serious and hard, and dealing with it in a really loving, vulnerable, but practical way.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. As I was coming through the rings of psychology, the first person we learned about was Freud, right?
Right.
And Freud would have you lay on a couch, and for months and months and months and months
Right.
and months,
Talk
he
about
would
your
have
mom.
you doing that, free association, therapy, psychosocial, the subconscious, and on and on and on. And we got to the place where we're like, we can't do that long of therapy. Let's get to some practical solutions that you can be involved in figuring out so that you'd actually apply them, do them.
100%. On the consultations, I tell my couples, I joke, but I'm serious that I am every day trying to talk myself out of a job. My goal is we have these deep conversations, but I'm going to share with you the knowledge, the tools. You go do the work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love when you said fundamental decision making is something you go back to as an individual, as an expert in your business,
Yeah.
because sometimes taking it back to basics and unpacking that conditioning and
Yes.
getting back to that foundation is so extremely important.
I love that. Listen, I know we can't go down all these rabbit holes, but two things there. Our schools, at least in America, the public school system is designed to teach us to be good citizens, not to be good connectors, not to be good, see through each other's lens, good communicators, good decision makers, not the critical thinking piece for the most part. So that's a big piece of this. And then how many of us were taught that counseling is taboo? How many people were taught that you're not supposed to do this unless, wow, you're really, something's really wrong with you or you're really broken, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, most of the couples I'm working with from the relationship piece are people who largely have not been in that position before, have not felt that it was appropriate to seek that out. So, all these things that I just want to change how we look at it, how we're exposed to it.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. What are some of the outdated relationship myths you recognize, and why is it important to disrupt them?
Oh, I love this topic. Yeah. So the TED Talk specifically is the topic of the myth that you should never go to bed angry. So
Yes.
that's one of the biggest ones and one of my favorites because all of us heard that.
Yeah.
And it is a myth because time of day matters. We are anxious at night, we're tired, we've used up all that critical thinking way earlier in the day. We've used up our capacity for effective decision making long before nighttime. So that's a big one. The other one is I do not believe in compromise. I hate the word compromise. And I
Yeah.
think we're all taught that that's so foundational to
Mm,
relationships. Why? By nature of that word, it implies that we're each giving up what we really want.
yeah.
Again, I think this goes to that misfit creative problem solving thing is like, no, there's got to be not your way or my way. There's got to be something else here. Let's keep
Yeah.
going until we figure out new ways to look at this so both of us can be happy and fulfilled. So that's another one I feel really strongly about. There's a bunch others. The
Yeah.
communication part, I think, the idea that relationships fall apart because you're not having sex or because of money issues, or, a lot of those are myths. So I get passionate about that topic.
When you say myths, I think that's an interesting word too, because I think those are variables that influence
Yes.
how we respond or react in the relationship. It doesn't mean that it's everything, but they're variables that have something to do, but not everything to do with why a relationship is disintegrating.
Yeah, exactly. Well put.
So I think, from a holistic perspective, as a holistic practitioner, I look at all these variables because I think they do influence how we respond or react to the relationship, in the relationship, as we grow or do not grow that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have choices too. We choose to do A, B, or C. But I think we
Absolutely.
all come from different modalities. And I do really appreciate where you're coming from with whole life solutions as an executive career and relationship coach. We shared a lot. We've went down a lot of different roads here today. You're doing so much. And I can't wait to listen to your TEDx. It is a
Ah,
2024 TEDx, and I am excited for you. I'm excited about all the things that you're doing. My last question for you is if you could leave the listeners with one tip about navigating stressful situations, what would that be?
when you're feeling really overwhelmed, find one very small but very concrete thing. Think 10 minutes or less. One thing that you're going to knock out before you let yourself have some peace and some grace that day. One thing. That may seem minor, but it works on so many levels. It sort of tricks our brain that we can trust ourselves that we're going to take a step forward. It gives you some real information to just keep nudging that path until it does start to become your new normal, like we were talking about. But also, more often than not, when you do that tiny concrete thing, you feel so much better about yourself that it gives you that little surge for the rest of the day. So give yourselves the grace when you're having a hard day. It's okay. Take some time to binge watch something, do some social media, meditate, preferably what gives you that peace, but knock out one tiny concrete thing first.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
It's been so my pleasure. Thank you, Summer.
Absolutely. You can follow Dawn Smith on Instagram at Whole Life Dawn, on LinkedIn at Dawn Smith, on Facebook and X at Whole Life Solutions, and at www.wholelifesolutions.biz.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.